So this week we're going to cover aggregate queries. They're also called summary queries. So you're going to want to read chapter 5 in your book and go through the lecture demo. The lecture demo starts with showing you how to do a very simple summary query using count, sum, max, min, and average. Those are all aggregate functions. So how to create a query when you are using the functions with the different columns. So you'll notice that you always take the name of the function and in parentheses, you give it the name of your column. And they're pretty self-explanatory. Count just does a tally, sum totals, max gives you the max in a column, the highest, min gives you the lowest in a column, and average averages the numbers. You can use max and min on numeric columns. Okay, it'll look at them in A to Z order. So I do have some interactive examples for you to practice with these different functions. And so this is going to bring us the smallest price, but you could also change it and bring back the largest price. Or you could bring back the average, or you could choose to bring back a bunch of them. And we'll call this smallest. So this will do both. Okay, so you can kind of play around with this. There's min, max. Count simply does a tally, just counts things up. So I think, is this the product table we're looking at? Yeah. So we should be able to do a count on the product ID, I believe. And, you know, if you don't give it an alias, the column heading is not very nice. So that's why people use aliases with this. And most of the time when you use these, you're going to want other columns included in the query, not just the aggregate. And so if you want other columns, you just separate them with commas like you normally would. The difference here is that if you include anything besides the aggregate function, you need to include a group by clause with those extra columns. So here I've got country, so I do group by country. But if I also wanted to include city, I would have to add that to the group by. And if you want to sort, you just add your order by clause. And I can sort by country or city, or I can sort by the count of the customer ID. And I can do it in descending order, so the biggest ones are up at the top. Okay, the key that you have to remember here is any additional columns that you add. And I wonder if I can see for customers. Okay, so that's showing me everything here. Contact name. Okay. So we will redisplay this one. And now we know we have contact name. And we'll also do city. So now I have 3 that don't have aggregate functions. So all of those need to come down here. Okay, so these are really useful because you can kind of play around, and you saw In order to see all of the columns, all I did was kind of click, and then I can see what all of the column names are. The having clause is how you filter the result set of your aggregate function. So this is the sequence for a select that includes a where, other columns besides the aggregate function, and that wants to filter the result set. So that's kind of a lot going on. So we'll take a look at the example. So what it's going to do is select, it's going to count up the number of customers, going to display the country. We're grouping, we have to do the group by because we're including something that doesn't have an aggregate function. And then we want to filter the result set. So just running this is going to give us a result set, but out of that result set, let's see if I can comment this out. Out of this result set, we only want to see countries that have more than 5 customers. Okay, so let's get rid of this and run it. And then out of this result set, we're only going to see those countries that have more customers. So that is what having does. It is totally different than the where clause. Okay, and having is typically done with your aggregate. So we're doing it on the count. Okay, so here's another one for you to look at. So here, this is a little bit more complicated because we've got an order table and an employee table. We're basically looking for employees that have placed orders. And we're displaying the last name and the number of orders that they've placed because we're tallying up the order ID for each employee. Because we have the last name here, we have to group by last name. And if we just do that, okay, this is what we get. Now, if we want to see the employees that have ordered more than 10, then we can add in this having clause, and that eliminates the employees that haven't ordered as much. So anytime you want to filter based on an aggregate, you have to use the having clause. I did include some SQL Server extensions. Extensions, keep in mind, they are only good in SQL Server. They are not part of the T-SQL language. MySQL and other SQL applications won't have these commands, but they are kind of useful if you want to display totals. Okay, so you can actually copy these, paste them right into SSMS and run them so you can see what they do. But you will notice that they all display totals. And there is an extra credit on the SQL Server extensions. It's not part of your textbook assignment, but it is offered as extra credit. So once you get done with the textbook assignment, or once you get done with the lecture demo, you're going to look at the textbook assignment and you'll notice that the first video goes through tasks 1 through 4, then tasks 5 and 6 have their own separate videos. And so you're basically going to be creating summary queries using different aggregate functions. Okay, so this should give you a feel for how these functions work. And then you are going to work on your final project. This is milestone number 3. There are 3 parts to this milestone, and this is the first part. And I should mention, when you are done with all 3 parts of this milestone, you are done with your term project. So milestone 3, part 1. You need to create 4 aggregate queries for data within your own tables. And so you do need to use the different aggregate functions. I don't want 4 queries with only count in them. So even if you have primarily text columns, you can still use max and min. Okay, so I've got some examples. Your examples do not have to be complicated. They can be very, very simple. Okay, so I could have just done, I would not have to do a join at all. I could have just counted the customers, okay, and been done with it. Okay, so these do not have to be super complex. Okay, I tried to do realistic ones, ones that I would actually run if this were my actual table. Okay, so I can show you a couple more examples. Hopefully this will help you. And I'm just going to do it over here. All right, so right now I've got everything from products showing. And this is basically an online version of Northwind's database. You are going to be doing these summary queries on your own term projects. But I could do sum of price as grand total. And actually, that's all I'd have to do. And let's say I only have text, right? And so what do I do if I have text? I can't do sum, but let me display that again. For product name, I certainly could do a max for product name. I could do a min for product name. And I can do a count of product name. Okay, so you can see how the max min work. It basically goes through the alphabetical listing and brings back the smallest, which is at the top, the largest, which is at the bottom. Okay, and you can do that for any of them. And let's see, so let's do one with other columns. So this one is suppliers. And so, yeah, there's not really good ones from this. It's almost all text. So I could just simply do a count of supplier ID. And usually when people do a count, they choose the primary key because that always has something in it. And I could do the number of suppliers though in each country. That would be good. Let me go through country, city. And we'll do the contact name. So I got my aggregate in there. Then I've got to do a group by and everything that is not an aggregate. And why don't we do an order by country, and within country, city. Within city, we'll do contact name. We'll try descending. Let's see what happens. All right, so we've only got one. And not noticing any difference here. Let's try get rid of that. Yeah, it's not. Let's just change order by. There, now we're getting some action here. And we could just do contact name. And we can do ascending order. Okay, but I think you guys are getting the idea of how this works. So that is the lab assignment. And those are the only things that are required this week. If you want to do the extra credit, you can. This lets you practice the SQL Server extensions. So this kind of goes with that very last part of the lecture notes. And it gives you totals. And on the rows with the totals, depending on what you are totaling, it is going to display null. But later in the course, we will learn how to get rid of the null. Then there's also, just for fun, a Jeopardy game that you can play. Works just like regular Jeopardy. Oh, this one you guys should definitely get. What type of function returns a summary value for a numeric column? So that'd be what is an aggregate function. Yay. So then you do plus and give yourself the points. Okay. So you can play that if you want to. There are also some additional resources that you can look at if you feel like you need more information in any of these topic areas. If you run into problems or have questions, let me know, and have an awesome week.